Gillette, what the hell happened to you guys? So I'm a couple of months late to the party here about this, but for anybody who hasn't seen the latest commercial, it is basically an attack of shaming men while trying to shave away masculinity. With a smear campaign against men, trying to paint them as vile, bad people who either turn a blind eye to, overlook or engage in or endorse sexist or bad behaviour. This is another attempt to soften up and demoralise the male psyche with an abysmal attack on masculinity and the male gender role, justified poorly by claiming that we've created some form of masculinity crisis with a 2-minute video for a shaving company and not a single razor in sight. You seriously can't even keep your misguided politics out of shaving now? The best a man can get, or so they say, yet this message that they're portraying here completely conflicts with the very motto that they've been pushing for years. First off, you've already lost a lot of respect and credibility the moment you showed us one of the young turds. Turds that are well overdue for being flushed a long time ago, some might agree. We basically live in an age of absurdity where men, particularly heterosexual white males, are expected to soak up dubious criticism and hatred like a sponge without even saying anything. Boys and men removing masculinity and becoming feminized, especially through the time which shapes them growing up, will not only make them lose respect from other men, but will also be off-putting to women as well, considering most women prefer more masculine men. Generally, even the man-hating radical feminist types tend to prefer more traditionally masculine men over the femboys that suck up to them.
Can I have that pussy, please?
Telling men that it's wrong to act on what generally comes naturally in repressing masculinity only makes for more weak-minded and unhappy men, and resulting in further depression and unproductive behaviour. Over the years in some Western countries there has been an increasing amount of men going without, while the percentages of women and relationships in these areas remains roughly the same. This is due to things like sexual liberation, social conditioning, and other things like Tinder that allow quick access to the top guys relatively a lot easier, combined with men's overall desperation that allows women to have an abundance of options, as leaving a lot of regular men left out of the game entirely. This isn't the case, however, in Japan, as seen that even a large portion of their female population still remains sexless.
This article states that almost half of the single young male and female population of Japan are virgins. A study of Japanese people aged 18 to 34 found that almost 70% of unmarried men and 60% of unmarried women are not in any relationship. Around 42% of the men and a slightly higher at just over 44% of the women admitted they were virgins. Now that is a lot of a country's population.
We all know what repressed sexuality can do, and it often can come out in rather strange and unhealthy ways, or even manifest itself into depression or other psychological issues. Japan also being home to objectively some of the most bizarre and depraved sexual fetishes, and also being home to a park specifically devoted to the penis.
This is also a country with relatively high suicide rates.
And Gillette is a US-based company which is owned by Procter & Gamble, a company caught up in accusations of child labour, which is now trying to portray itself on some kind of moral high ground, but that's just a front. This isn't so much of a plan to discourage bad social behaviour, but more of a campaign to try and emasculate and divide.
According to the study in the United States, 83% of kids in a single-parent family are with their mothers. In 2006, 12.9 million families in the US were headed by a single parent, 80% of which were headed by a female. In a study of New Zealand's single-parent families, 5/6 of which were headed by a female. Studies report that children of single-parent households, after controlling other variables such as family income, are more likely to have problems. Those children are twice as likely to suffer from mental illness, and children without any present father figure are 3 times more likely to be unhappy, and are also more likely to engage in antisocial behaviour such as substance abuse and juvenile delinquency. According to this study, where the percentages remain roughly the same over many years, 23% of white children and a massive 65% of black children are living with a single mother. According to the Bureau of Statistics study, blacks accounted for 39.4% of the prison and jail population in 2009. Yet the statistics for black population within the United States is around 12 to 13%. Their level of incarceration compared to any others is undeniably disproportionately high. More than 1 in 5 white children and over half of black children have a mainly female influence at both home and school. Toxic masculinity isn't the problem, the lack of masculinity is.
You don't have to be a detective to work that out!
The video was directed by one Kim Gehrig, an Australian feminist whose biggest video hardly has any views, presumably most of which come from people linked to a Gillette ad. It has one of the worst like to dislike ratios of any videos that I've ever seen, possibly due to the backlash from the Gillette one, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. Go check it out. We're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is really what we need. How about the best a man can get as a father? I found that they removed this clip of a black rapper objectifying women in a typical hip-hop fashion, something that's been going on for a lot of years, but they had it taken out early, I think, presumably because it didn't fit the rest of their agenda. Looking at the video as a whole, they vilified white men while making out non-white men to be some kind of virtuous heroes. So, of course, they had to remove the clip with the rapper in order to keep up the narrative. Black Knight's an accurate representation of today's society, you might agree. They even made a black woman a victim of sexual harassment by some white guy to further add to this agenda that they're pushing. They used Terry Crews here as an example, who, although gave hyper-masculine yet comical performances in his Old Spice commercials, also was responsible here for this pretty sad speech.
If you are making anybody uncomfortable, don't do that. It's not that hard.
Come on, man. Some people make others feel uncomfortable just by being there. They show men objectifying women on TV, yet women are constantly doing it to themselves. No man is telling these pop artists to act like glorified strippers. In today's age, it is almost rare to find a female chart pop singer whose videos and performances couldn't be mistakenly confused for some kind of softcore porn. Miley was no exception.
Even Taylor Swift went from looking like a princess to Darth Vader's slutty mistress.
I know that if I had young daughters myself, I'd be a lot more concerned with them growing up watching women on TV act this way and behave like this, and reduce themselves to classless sex objects and think that it's okay, rather than just seeing a few men doing a bunch of catcalling. Now this part here is trying to demonise men as if to say that this is a one-sided problem. See, we didn't really get to see the previous conversation to judge this situation. For all we know, she could have actually said something to provoke this kind of reaction. Either way, having bad bosses, co-workers is an agenda-specific thing. Ask a lot of female workers who hate their female bosses or other workers, and there has never been a shortage of male employees who get rubbish, mistreated, looked down upon or abused by their bosses as well. Continuing on, seriously, with all the bad things that can go on and happen at parties, this is the example that they choose to pick on. This is a pretty light-hearted thing compared to a lot of regular crude language, actions, fights and other things that can happen with parties with a whole bunch of random people. Also, about the smiling thing, you have no idea how many times people have told me over the years to smile, persistently as well. Out of everything though, this is probably the part that gets to me the most. So this guy comes along and tells another man off for trying to talk to another girl or finding her attractive. I'd be like myself, what the hell are you doing, man? I'd just shove him out the way. I mean, this is to suggest that it's wrong to go out and talk to random people or pursue new relationships. You'd have to ask, are the girls these days really against men trying to talk to them like this? It already shows that a significant percentage of men already think that it's harassment to walk up to a stranger and start chatting to them. So many guys already don't have the balls to do it. You know, there's been plenty of guys that I've known personally who don't like being single, yet when they're out, you know, they talk about attractive girls being around, and I ask them, have any of them actually tried talking to them or made any moves like that? But none of them ever do. Maybe they just doubt their chances. I'm not trying to debate whether it's pointless or not. I'm debating more that it should be okay to try if somebody actually chooses to. All this will do is help to shame men for wanting relationships and create a lot more lonely guys who are too afraid to do anything, so the ones who do have a chance just let it go. I think the complaints start to come in when guys they wouldn't be interested in do it, similar to the whole harassment versus flirting thing, depending on how they see the individual man. But you can't have the good without the bad. See, if you try to discourage guys from approaching or trying their luck, then you'd also be possibly ruling out or discouraging the ones who you might be interested in as well. It kind of works both ways. Here we also have an attack on the bloke standing around a barbecue. It's a staple thing of male outdoor socialising and a couple of kids play fighting. See, the thing is here is that kids are like that, and it's part of life growing up for a lot. And if you stop them, they'll end up growing up soft, and a lot of them will end up relying on an adult being there to break it up or something like that. And one day they're going to be in a situation where there is no adult there to break it up. Most of the attacks that I've been caught up in or seen on the street have been ignored by the general public, and a lot of the time they won't really seem to help you out. And here they are comparing this sort of thing to this poor kid getting hunted down the street by a pack of other kids. In my mind, these two aren't even comparable things. This company thought that by triggering a response from people that it would end up resulting in pushing enough buttons to get people talking and further their publicity. You've heard the saying that any publicity is good publicity, right? Well, not exactly in this case. The manipulation of the like to dislike ratio alone without anything else is a definition of fascist propaganda. Controlling the message, intensifying social discord, brainwashing, that's a fascist act there. I noticed this myself when I returned to the video, but what was altered even more was the actual comments, with thousands of them being removed. And all this to try and trick people that this ad was received better critically than it was. Well, this ad might as well be a commercial for other shaving companies because they seem to be the only ones profiting from it.
What you are witnessing is basically corporate suicide in the name of political correctness.
Bitch, are you dumb, stupid?
This is a company that established itself over the turn of the previous century, that built itself up by men for over 110 years, all to be objectively destroyed in under 2 minutes by one woman.
I find it almost hilarious that Gillette are putting the blame on men collectively for objectifying women while they themselves slap their name on the asses of their own small army of latex bimbos.
I see here that there's a lot of guys that are claiming to want to boycott the company or stop buying the products or even making videos smashing them. Personally, I would suggest myself to people, rather than just boycotting it, instead give them a bombardment of their filthy used razors and products instead of throwing them out to further show their displeasement of how they feel. You know, you could always throw them out, or you could start mailing them your used and dirty blades, give them an influx of waste product. Anyway, remember the boys watching today will be replaced by the men of tomorrow.
Breaking the law!